Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Ondřej, and we will be talking CSS today. If you wish to see the presentation I will be showing, you can scan the QR code that points to my webpage, and I will publish the slide deck afterwards. Great. So let's get started. Let me ask you, how did you enjoy the party on the boat? Was it good? Was it great? Yay! Yeah, the party was awesome. Also, the boat was awesome. And do you know what else is awesome? CSS is awesome. So, do you agree? Yes. Yeah, obviously you wouldn't be here otherwise. So I like to write CSS. I enjoy doing that. I would say that CSS is awesome. However, it's not perfect. It's not flawless. From time to time, there are some quirks or approaches which we do not find really straightforward, and we will be talking about that today. Let's start with a test, with a quiz, with a simple quiz question, which relates to the name of the tech itself. So we have CSS, and the acronym CSS. Do you know what the first letter stands for? Because often people say, yeah, CSS, I know that. Those are the style sheets, yeah, the style language for web pages. And the first letter, C, often gets omitted, either intentionally or unintentionally. So yeah, you probably know that the first C stands for cascading, or the cascade. That's common knowledge. However, the cascade itself is a pretty complex topic, and even if you ask a pretty experienced front-end developer, people that do CSS for a living, they often fail to correctly explain what the cascade is or what the cascade does. For instance, they might try to convince you that the inheritance is a cascade. The fact that, yeah, you set the color on the body and it gets inherited by all these elements which are inside the body, and that is the cascade, right? Well, no, that's the inheritance, but that's not the cascade. These concepts we have both in CSS, that's a rich language, but they're not the same. So we will focus not on inheritance, but on the cascade. And the cascade itself is related to the fact that one CSS property might be defined in multiple places throughout the code base, throughout the whole list of different style sheets provided by user, by the browser, by the application itself, and so on, or even in multiple places or multiple times in one particular style sheet. So it's possible and also often desirable to provide conflicting instructions. Let's have a look at what a conflicting instruction is. Say that in our CSS file, we have a declaration of a color, and we have two declarations, the same property, color, and two different values. So I chose my favorite colors in CSS, the salmon and the light golden rod yellow. Now, this is a conflict because there is no clear way to decide which of these colors will be used. And if you are like me, you want to understand your colors. So I also made these two boxes filled with the color they represent. The salmon color is pretty straightforward. And now the light golden rod yellow, I was always interested about the origin of this color. Is there, for instance, some golden rod that would give name to this color? Unfortunately, no, there are no rods made of gold in CSS. Instead, there is this flower, which is called goldenrod, in Czech zlatobíl, and apparently its petals have such important color that it gave name to the light golden rod yellow named CSS color, the longest ever. So let's get back to our conflicting instructions. We have these two declarations, and our goal is to decide which of these will get used, because the browser might decide in a way which is not really compatible with our design intentions. And now the rules of the cascade chime in. So the cascade is an algorithm, or rather a set of algorithms to resolve the declarations which are conflicting. And these rules, the rules of the cascade, are really complex and numerous. Actually, the browser needs to provide a competition in six different categories: origin, context, attachment, layer, specificity, and order. And these two declarations are compared in these 6 disciplines until one of those wins. The stronger one wins. The stronger one gets applied, either salmon or light goldenrod yellow. So if you're really interested in the cascade, this image showcases all the rules that are inside the cascade, all the algorithms that are used to compare. And this is very hard, very complex. Nobody remembers this by head. So normally this is hidden under the browser implementation. And we, as web developers, as HTML authors, we often cause and resolve conflicts using 2 small tools which are part of the cascade. And these small tools which are available for our usage are the specificity algorithm or rule set, and also the bang important declaration or suffix or modifier, the thing we add to the end of a rule. Unfortunately, these 2 tools that we can use to influence the cascade are not that great. So the first one, specificity. Developers often do not like working with specificity because those rules are complex and obtrusive. Let me remind you that the specificity is the general idea that a selector has a strength, a numerical value, so 2 selectors can compete based on how strong they are, and it's very weird to compute this value, and nobody really does that. So we can use the specificity, but we do not want to. So the second tool we can use is the important suffix, and we are often told not to do that. In an introductory course to CSS, the teacher often says, "So kids, let me tell you something, we have this important thing, and you should not use it. Do not talk about it." The question is why? Is it forbidden? Does it kill kittens or something? No, the true reason why we do not often use the important suffix is because it doesn't provide the granularity that we want. It's a Boolean value. It's either there or it is not. And there is nothing in between, so we are not able to provide the prioritization that we would like to use. And CSS Layers to the rescue. CSS Layers are a brand new tool number 3, so now we have the specificity and the importance, and also CSS Layers. Fortunately for us, we hope that we will be able to resolve our further conflicts only exquisitely using the CSS Layers tool, not using the specificity at all, and not using the importance at all. Now, the thing that I'm talking about, the CSS Layers, is a standardized issue, standardized thing. You can read about it in the document CSS Cascading and Inheritance Level 5, which is freely available online for your viewing pleasure. So let me show you how that works. But before, if you are old, like me, you might remember that we already had layers in web development, because back in 1997, the Netscape Communicator 4.0 introduced the HTML layer tag, and that was a big hype. Fortunately for us, we're not going to tackle that. We're going to focus on something different. The CSS layers are a new thing, not related to HTML layer tag. Great, so let me show you how these CSS layers are to be used. We are now able, using these layers, to group our individual declarations into small bins, into named layers. These are established primarily using the at rule called at layer, and they are also equipped with a name. So in this particular example, we have 2 layers, the layer called framework and the layer called app. And what is important here is the order. Because the first layer, framework, was established before the layer app, it means it has lower priority. So if we have a conflicting declaration, such as the color salmon and color light goldenrod yellow, the second declaration is stronger, has a higher priority, because it belongs to a layer that was established second. So there are no specificity issues. You might notice that the line 5 provides a selector with a lower specificity than the selector on line 2. But there is no specificity in play at all, because these 2 declarations come from different layers, which is great. And now let me repeat that the core principle of the layers is the order of establishment. We are free to establish the layer order individually on line number 1 without actually adding any rules inside these layers. And so the first line is the most important one. It says we will have 2 layers, and their order implies the priority of rules without actually filling them with anything. And we can then fill them afterwards in arbitrary order because their order has been already established. We might also have some rules in our web app that do not belong to any layers at all. And these are automatically assigned the top priority. In other words, there is an automatic, anonymous, top-level, top-priority layer created for those unlayered rules. Great, so let me show you more examples of how does this work. We have more establishment rules. On line number 1, we are able to create a layer just by using the import keyword. So in this example, I will import a third-party framework into its own CSS layer. And this layer, named A, will be the first one, which means it will get the lowest priority. That's because I want to override those. So then I will establish 2 new layers, B and C, on line 2, without giving them any rules. Then I will continue adding a 4th layer on line number 3, and I will add some declarations into the layer, and I'm free to extend layers afterwards as many times as I wish. For instance, adding stuff to a layer named A, the layer with the framework code. So these are the primary tools, primary syntax modes for establishing CSS layers. Perhaps a little bit tricky thing is when you decide to combine the newly gained knowledge of CSS layers with the important keyword, because we're still thinking that the important keyword shall be used from time to time. So as I've already said, if we have CSS rules into layers, the layer order is what decides their priority. So normally, the top priority rules will be located in the app layer, in this example, and the second priority, lower one, will be in the framework. However, once we create rules which have the important suffix, the order of layers is reversed. So the top priority right now are those rules which are located in the framework layer, the lowest priority one, when they are suffixed with the important modifier. The second most important are those which are important and in the top priority layer. And then we have the regular order, which we already encountered, which means that the app layer rules are more important than the framework. And you might think that this is really weird because it's reversed, but it's actually really consistent with how CSS works today. Because today we have 3 different origins of styles: the browser, the author, and the user. And the modifier important works exactly the same way already today because it reverses the priority. So this was designed to be consistent with the CSS we are using today. We have several minutes left still, so let me give you a more concrete example of how one might use CSS layers to structure the application. So I've decided to create a web app, and I decided that I need 4 layers. Wow! So on the first line, I need to establish the order. So the first one will be called reset. I'm not really good at naming, so yeah. The second one will be called framework because I will be building on a framework. Yeah, nobody wants to do that from scratch. The third layer called app will contain my own styles. And finally, I decided to create a behavior layer to be able to override things based on user interaction. And let me fill the first 2 layers right now. The first one, the reset layer, will just contain my favorite reset declarations, such as the 0 margin on body. That's pretty popular. And I also want all items which are hidden, using the HTML attribute hidden, to be really hidden, so nothing can override that. And in order to do that, I decide to pick the lowest priority layer, but with the important modifier. And this magically, the line number 4, makes this rule the absolute top priority, not really overridable rule, because that's what I want. If the item is hidden, it will be hidden independently on what other rules are there to make it display flags or something else. Great. So that's my first layer. Let's continue to the second one. I'm not really interested in internals of the framework. So I just import it into its own layer called framework, and I hope it will work. But from time to time, I will need to override something. So that's because that's why I have my third layer called the app. And that's a place where I define my own styles for the app, and I might be able to override some framework styles. Note that I'm not really interested in the specificity stuff. The framework might be using selectors, using IDs, tag names, class names, pseudo-classes, and so on. And that's really none of my concern, because my own layer, where I define my own styles, is one layer higher, so automatically overriding all framework stuff. That would be line number 4. And finally, the behavior stuff, because from time to time I want my elements to be modified slightly, for instance, using the hover pseudo class. So I define my own overrides into the 4th layer called behavior. And now the hover pseudo class will get applied every time the button is hovered, independently on whether it's styled using the framework or the app or something completely different, because these rules come from the 4th layer, which has the highest importance. So finally, the light golden or yellow color wins once the user hovers. Great. So right now, at this moment, you might be interested in browser support. You might want to start experimenting with CSS Layers, see if that suits your flow, if that solves some issues you've run into in CSS. So I've embedded the table from Can I Use. We're basically used to ignoring the first column, right? That's the IE. And if we try to ignore the first column, we can see almost green line. So all contemporary browser versions are already supporting this. So we are free to try experimenting with CSS Layers, and that's great. However, in my limited time window, I wasn't able to fully explain everything related to CSS Layers. The spec is long, covers many issues. So there are additional features related to CSS Layers, such as nested layers, because you're able to declare a layer inside another layer, like in the Shrek movie, dotted layers, anonymous layers, and so on. So this is a hard topic, a large topic. If you want, I've provided some links where you can read about this in a little bit more detail. An introductory article called A Complete Guide to CSS Cascade Layers, the mandatory documentation at MDN, and an article from Bram at Bramus, The Future of CSS Cascade Layers. Great. So at this moment, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions to ask, you're out of luck, because there are no questions allowed today. Sorry. However, there will be a discussion starting in about 20-25 minutes right above us. I think the room is above the ceiling, and that's a discussion place where I will be available along with the next speaker for answering questions you have. So let me thank you again. It was nice seeing you, and bye.